Parte Miralem, eccolo il tentativo di tiro, la palla respinta, il capitano del
Hello and welcome to this Roma Press podcast. This week we're going to be talking about a number of issues. First of all, how we should take the Europa League seriously or not, and the upcoming clash. We're going to be talking about the Inter, Genoa and Milan games, and as well as the Mercato, and maybe talking about Totti as well, and whether or not he may have just got a bit too old for the responsibilities that he's been given this season. So with me is Daniele, our South African, who's a contributor to the site, and we also have a fellow Southerner from England, James Voss, with us today. Welcome, both of you.
Cheers, James.
Cheers, thank you.
Right, let's dive straight in then with the game against Manchester City and the Champions League as a whole. Obviously, Roma bowed out in third place, managed to drop down to the Europa League. But that Manchester City game, Danny, what did you make of it?
Well, obviously it's a bit vague now in my memory because it seems to have happened so long ago. But what I do remember is that we started out brightly. I would say we dominated the first 15 minutes. I think I remember that Holobus chance that could have put us a goal ahead, and then after that, not much really. Manchester City, I don't think we put them under much pressure after that, and a lot of fans will maybe look back and think we were put in a tough group, and maybe we perhaps shouldn't have ever made it out of the group. But I felt really disappointed at the time, especially because we had the group in our hands with two games to go. Having been beaten twice by Bayern Munich, having only won against CSK at home, and drawn City away, we had the group in our hands still, because of how bad City played against CSKA. But despite that, we conceded that late goal in Russia, and I think from then it kind of didn't look good. It seemed like the psychology was against us, the mindset, whatever you want to call it, because of the nature of the goal in Russia. And after that game, I thought we had a very slim chance of getting through the group. And then also when you consider how relatively weak City's team was to play us without Aguero, company, etc. I really think even if we went out playing well, I could have consoled myself. But I think the performance was bad as was the result, obviously.
So obviously now that sees 2-0 defeat sees Roma bow out and into the Europa League, where they were drawn in the round of 32. Of course, there were 64 teams in the group stages in the Europa League. They're against Feyenoord, who I think are currently league leaders in the Netherlands. I'm not 100% certain on that, but obviously a good team. They won their group as well, which had Sevilla in. James, what do you think of the draw? And do you think that we should take the Europa League seriously?
Well, I think I checked a few moments ago. Feyenoord were third actually in the Netherlands, so they're a little bit quite a way behind. PSV are leading, and then a bit behind Ajax. So they're not having the best of seasons. I think we should definitely take it seriously because there's a lot to be gained from it, both on and off the pitch, in terms of getting experience playing more European football, particularly knockout football, chance to win a European competition and play another one, the Super Cup game in August, the coefficient points that we would accumulate by a deep run in the Europa League, the money that would come, and the general exposure globally of Roma as the television audiences increase as you get deeper into the competition. And I think that the squad's big enough. It was designed to manage the Champions League and Serie A, so there's no reason, I think, why it can't handle the Europa League and Serie A. And we are actually at this moment in time, the favourites were the bookmakers to win the entire competition. So I think we have every reason to be serious about it and be motivated and try to win it. Whether we will or not is another question. But obviously there's still like about 6 or 7 weeks before we play the first game against Feyenoord. So we'll know by then where how things have gone more in Serie A, whether we stand a realistic chance of winning the Scudetto, probably at that stage. And so definitely, I think we should focus on it. And I think we have depends. I'm not so convinced we're going to find it easy, because if you look at recent history, Italian clubs haven't made the final for 15 years, which is is a long time. And Juventus, I think, and Fiorentina were the only semi-finalists in that time. So it's not a competition that Serie A clubs have had much success in, even though it looks on paper very achievable. So I think we have to wait and see what the attitude will be. About Garcia's approach to it, I don't know. I don't know what his approach will be, but I would think the management would be. They would like to do well.
I would agree with all of James' points as well. I think the mentality of not taking the Europa League series for Italian clubs is rather outdated, and we need those European club points. We don't even need it for the coefficient, even if you don't care about Italy as a whole, which I suppose you should to a degree. But even if you didn't care about Italy, you should care about Roma and their European coefficient, and hopefully moving from pot 4 to pot 3. And there's a complicated table about how it works and which teams we'd need to slip up. I remember noting that we'd preferably need Celtic and Salzburg to get knocked out early on, if we have any chance of moving from pot 4 to 3 for next year's Champions League group stage, should we qualify, which I assume we would. And also, James, a good point about the squad size, and that the squad was built to have 2 players for every position, and that we were meant to handle the Europa League, meant to handle the Champions League, and so we should be able to manage the Europa League too. And also, it's always important to win trophies and build a winning culture for a new project. And as soon as we can win a Coppa Italia or a Europa League, I think the better for our players' mentality and growth as a whole.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The key point is Roma have always, been considered, for want of a better word, bottlers in a way. I mean, we've only won three Serie A titles, and come second for so many years after the last one. So I agree. I think the Europa League should be taken seriously. Certainly, I think it's a great sort of stepping stone in a competition that will really help players who haven't got any Champions League experience since before this season. Really sort of help them gain an idea of what playing in Europe was about. I think it will toughen the squad up, and I think there is a real chance of Roma winning it. I mean, looking at the other teams in the competition, obviously there are a few to be worried about. Perhaps Everton and Spurs always seem to go quite far in the Europa League, regardless of how shoddy their normal Premier League stuff is. So it will be interesting to see how that all goes, frankly. But I'm looking forward to it. Of course, the only worry is that now it's on a Thursday. That will be a bit of trouble for squad fitness, but what can you do? Of course, there are some other interesting draws as well. I think my personal favourite, aside from the Roma one, is Torino and Athletic Club. I have a special place in my heart for them. I really like their sort of Basque policy and other such things. But that'll be an interesting one to see, certainly. as well as Fiorentina and Inter coming to Spurs and Celtic respectively. They will be good games as well, especially because they're so close. But let's move on now to some of the more recent Serie A games we've played. And before we get on to the disappointing Milan draw yesterday, let's talk about their city rivals, Inter, who we beat. Actually, as I was struggling in the library to do an essay and I couldn't actually watch it, but that was a while ago. And then we'll also briefly cover the Genoa game as well, which we also won. It seemed like Roma were getting back to their sort of start of season form. Would you agree, Dani?
Yeah, I would to an extent. I still don't think we look particularly good going forward, but yeah, we got the win. I think we were very fortunate in Genova to get the red card of Perrin and the penalty, although we did miss that. And honestly, I don't think we would have. Perhaps we wouldn't have gotten away with a win had we played against 11 men versus Genoa. Inter was a bit of a crazy game, a bit of a more high scoring, obviously, and I don't know. Inter, not much to pride yourself on beating them, really, to be honest. Especially since they've had a manager change and they've really struggled this season. I think they're in 11th or 10th place at the moment. Obviously, Genoa in terms of the table, a more informed team than Inter, and also to go away to Genova is always difficult, whether it's against Sampdoria or against Genoa. Quite difficult to play on that pitch and in that stadium. But yeah, I don't think we looked particularly great in either of those games, especially Genoa. I don't remember. Well, I remember we created a lot of chances, but they all came to nothing because we didn't have Destro on the pitch, so it was rather futile in what we did. I know a lot of fans comforted themselves saying that we created a lot of chances, but it doesn't really matter if you don't have anyone to finish them off. So yeah, I mean, obviously good results, but performances I still think lacking. There's something intrinsically different about the way we attack this season compared to the way we did last season.
Yes, there was also the Sassuolo home game, which I'll talk about, because that was a really interesting game, because I thought we played rather well in that game, apart from some problems in the first half, particularly to do with DeSantis, who was responsible for both the goals when Sassuolo took the early 2-0 lead. The first goal, completely his fault. The second goal, largely his fault, when he kicked the ball instead of passing it directly to a Sassuolo player. There was a gap in the centre of the pitch, which De Rossi tried to plug, and then the ball was passed over De Rossi's head, and Zaza made the run through and was able to finish past with a great shot, actually, past DeSantis. But then thereafter, apart from one or two counters as we try to press for to get back in the game, we created quite a few chances, and apart from there was one glaring miss by Destro in the first half when he headed wide, but from an excellent cross. But we looked more stable, more convincing, I think, in that game, and we eventually got the penalty kick, which Elias scored, and then we scored an excellent second goal, really excellently engineered goal with Destro, Florenzi, and Lajic all involved, and I was quite optimistic coming out of that game, going into the Manchester City game. But we had another tactical change, went back to the standard formation, and we faded really as that game went along, and we had a significant fall, I think, in the performance at the start of the second half. That since we hadn't scored when we were on top in the first half. In fact, before half-time, Manchester City were looking more dangerous, and then that only continued during the second half, and it had a bit of an inevitable feel about it when they eventually scored. So I think we are not convincing at all, even though we're able to still collect 3 points most weeks in Serie A. But I think that says more about the sort of opposition we've played than how well we're doing, actually.
I think that's a fair enough assessment, certainly. Let's talk now after those inter-Genoa games. Of course, we met Milan yesterday, which ended in 0-0 draw. I've seen vines everywhere today of that Jeremy Menez goal that was ruled offside. That is quite impressive with the bend. But Roma, disappointing not to get the win there, to keep up with Juventus, to keep the gap at 1 point over the Christmas period. Of course, Juventus now 4 in front. Not that that's the end of the world, because of course Juventus have been dropping points as well. But how disappointed will Roma be about not picking up anything from this game? And what was your assessment of the game, Dani?
A poor game overall from Roma. Disappointed to now be behind Juventus, and I feel. I think I don't see us catching them, actually, and I don't think it's about the points gap right now, but rather the way that we're playing at the moment. Yesterday didn't really create much. I mean, it took a red card to Armero for us to actually kick into gear, and I actually said to other fellow Roma fans, we can't expect to have a red card every week. After the Genoa game, where Perrin got a red, and we got another red in our favour this week, and we still couldn't capitalise on it against a very weak Milan team. I mean, their backline is Bonera, Mexes, Zapata, and Armero, which is largely a second string backline, and to not score one goal against a team that chipped 4 against Parma, who are rooted to the bottom of the table, is a bit troubling, honestly. And I think we'll get to this later, I'm sure, with Totti. But I get the feeling that we need something more. We need more of a presence in the box. We need more of a prima punta. We need more of a central figure for the wingers like Florenzi and Gervinho, and actually for Holebas, who I thought his deliveries in the box were pretty fair, actually. Caused a lot of danger when he actually whipped in the crosses, compared to someone like Torresidis, who came on for the last 15 minutes and pretty much gave the ball away every time he got the ball. But it's useless having a player like Holebas or Maicon on the flanks if you've got no one in the middle. I mean, I've seen a lot of instances this season where Totti has played and the fullbacks pretty much have no idea what to do because they get in a crossing position and there's no one in the box, so they either put it in for an aimless ball or they pass back to a De Rossi or Nainggolan who kicks off another move from deep. I think Milan could have got something out of yesterday if they'd countered better. I thought Jeremy Menez wasn't actually that great. I think Manolas had him in his pocket the whole game, bar one nutmeg, I think it was. Manolas, by the way, the man of the match for me. Fantastic centre-back. On a whole, very, very disappointing. We didn't create much, didn't create any quality chances. I only remember one Gervinho shot in the first half that was what I thought would be a goal. I saw a lot of tweets about the not given handball of Nigel de Jong, but it looked hard to spot, actually, because the ball was whipped in and it looked like Gervinho might have got a touch to it with his head, and then it can't be considered a handball, as my understanding of the rules is, because of the distance between Gervinho's head and Nigel de Jong's hand. In other words, that if Gervinho did get a flick on it, it would have been almost impossible for de Jong to move his hand because of the short proximity between the two. So I wasn't too aggrieved by that decision. But yeah, like I said, on a whole, very, very, very disappointing game.
James, on of course, Roma slipping behind Juventus to a 4-point gap over this Christmas break with half the season done. Now, it seems like perhaps this season's going the same way as last season. Roma are slipping up a lot more than Juventus are, and slowly but surely the gap will get wider. But I personally, in my opinion, I think whilst the gap got wider and wider, I reckon it will stay at about the same 4 points between the two throughout the season. I don't actually think Roma will win it this season. But I mean, what's your opinion on the whole thing? Do you think Juventus will still slip up? Obviously, they're going to slip up, but are Roma strong enough, and Juventus, are they weak enough after last season for there to be a big shift between it?
No. And the reason why, I think, is because although in terms of the table, there's only that 3-point gap now, we got the point yesterday. And if you think about it, if we'd drawn the game in Turin rather than losing it against Juventus, they'd have 2 points less, we'd have a point more, we'd be level. I think that Juventus are more convincing than us, and that over the so on one hand, someone can say, well, we haven't played particularly well, we haven't convinced, and yet we're still more or less, if we were to beat them in the return game of the Olympics, we'd be level on points with them. On one hand, I think that I don't expect, unless there's like a significant injury in our attack, I don't expect Garcia to change much between now and the end of the season in terms of selection and tactically. And I think that will ultimately be our undoing, and we'll probably end up closer to the team finishing third than we will to Juventus. So I can see Juventus continuing to do as they have been doing, and probably win relatively comfortably their fourth consecutive title by the end of the season, and will be, worst case scenario, will be somewhere between them and the club coming third.
Let me ask you a follow-up question on it. Do you think that, obviously, the investment recently into Roma, as well as Champions League money, do you think that Roma will get closer and closer to Juventus over the coming years, or do you think Juventus have too much firepower almost to stay ahead? Especially with how, at the moment, obviously the Italian league's a lot weaker than other European counterparts, and many a team is sniffing around some of Roma's and Juventus' best players. For one, Pogba, Vidal, Strootman to Man United always seems to be a reported rumour. What do you think?
I think it depends on how the squad is managed over the coming years, because Sabatini, you can see, has quite a clearly defined strategy in the transfer market. He's buying a particular, usually a particular type of player, and only breaks that. He's buying a player that generally is younger, is growing, and represents. Can bring significant resale value to the club on the one hand, but also benefit from them a lot while they're here and help them grow. And on the other hand, you have Garcia, who's sticking. I mean, yesterday, one of the alarming things I think is the way that yesterday, for example, and against Manchester City in that decisive Champions League game, 4 of the starting players were aged 33, 35, 37 and 38. And yesterday against Milan, 6 of the players were 30 or over. And so there's a real dichotomy really between what Sabatini seems to want and what Garcia seems to want. So how that plays, how that can be, if it can be reconciled over the coming months and years, that will play a big part in how the squad moves forward. I think there's got to be a much better synergy between Sabatini, if he stays as the DS, and Garcia or whoever the coach is, in order to really flourish, both in Serie A in terms of challenging Juventus and performing in Europe.
I see. That's an interesting point. Let's move on now to Totti. As you mentioned about ages, of course, the eternal captain is 38 now, I think, and it doesn't look like he's planning on slowing down anytime soon. But perhaps because Roma have grown so comfortable with Totti over the past, almost, how long is it now? Almost
21 years.
21 years, yeah, that's it. Before I was even born, Totti was playing. So there you go. But I mean, perhaps they haven't strengthened up front as much as they should. Obviously, Destro is second choice striker, but I mean, Garcia's management of him is a totally different ball game. But I mean, just purely, what is your opinion on Totti? I mean, he gives experience. He can play some great balls. He's still got the vision. Obviously, he's not as fast as he used to be. But he seems to have drawn a lot of criticism, especially from one of us here, Daniele. So, Danny, do you want to tell me what's wrong with Totti, and what would you do about handling the legend? Because a lot of clubs recently have really sort of messed up how they've treated their legends at the end. Del Piero, for example, for Juventus being one of the key ones. Maldini refusing to go back to AC Milan yet. Seedorf being sacked in the way that he was at the end of last season. What do you think about Totti, and how should we handle him?
I don't think much. I think he's a great servant of the club. I mean, obviously the top goal scorer, the most appearances for the club. And I definitely recognise what he did and what kind of a player he was. He was world class, no doubt. But he passed his point a few years ago. I think Zeman was probably the last revival of anything that we could have held on to. And even then, it was because it was a Zeman effect. Most attackers look good in a Zeman side. I don't understand the criticism I get for saying that Totti shouldn't be the starter. I mean, where's the club going when the number one first choice striker is 38 years old? And not only that, he's an atypical striker, which, in other words, is that he doesn't suit every system, and he makes a lot of tactical problems for us. My biggest issue is that when Totti plays, Gervinho and Florenzi or Iturbe and Ljajic have different responsibilities as to when Destro plays. So when Totti plays, Gervinho has more of a goal-scoring job on his hands. He's got more responsibility in front of goals because Totti's not going to be in and around the box. He's going to be dropping deep to create. Now, players like Iturbe, Gervinho, Florenzi, as good as they aren't finishers. They can finish decent enough. They're professional footballers, but they aren't finishers. So my big issue is that when Destro plays, Gervinho's job is to set up Destro, which is much easier than for Gervinho to finish or for Iturbe to finish. So as a team, we're more effective when a player like Destro plays. And it's not even me being a fanboy of Destro necessarily. It's me being a fanboy of a number 9, of a prima punta, of a conventional striker. Obviously, some of the criticisms being levelled will be that we'd be too predictable with a number 9, but I think we'd be much, much more efficient because the team would play better as a whole. I think Totti also takes away a lot of the responsibility of Pjanic, and in a bad way. I think Pjanic should have more responsibility. The team should be built around players like Pjanic, Destro, Iturbe. Instead, tactically, we are pretty much built around Totti. And, well, to handle him, there's not much you can do because he's going to play another season after this anyways. I suppose the only thing you could do is deny him another contract after that, which would be, in my opinion, ridiculous. He'd be almost 40, he'd be late 39 by the time he retires. So I wouldn't give him another contract, and I think the last contract we gave him was a mistake. So there's little you can do. I think, although people may say Del Piero was ruined, the whole situation was ruined by Juventus, I think Juventus took the decision as a business more than a family home, and sometimes this almost pseudo nepotism from Roma is a bit suffocating. It suffocates the club and denies us growth. So there's not much you can do now. I mean, obviously the best thing to do would be to phase him out as much as possible and give him a limited role. I mean, and if Destro isn't going to play, I mean, you might as well sell him and cash in and buy someone more suited to Totti style. And that's why on Twitter I said yesterday or today that we would have been better off getting someone like Jeremy Menez and having a false 9 system where it's either Totti or Menez, because then the system would be clearly defined when it isn't. You can't take off Totti and put on Destro on the 60th minute and expect results, and I think that's what the fans are harsh on Destro for, because he can't just score coming in 20 minutes in a system that isn't built for it.
Yeah, I think that some good points there, because there's definitely a problem in terms of goal scoring. Because when it was interesting watching one of the Champions League games against the game in Moscow against CSKA, and the commentators on the channel I was watching were saying it's difficult to see how Roma are going to score a goal other than from a restart. And of course, the goal we scored was from a restart, from the free kick, because we place a great reliance on the finishing skills of Gervinho, Laic, and Florenzi, and Iturbe, but Iturbe doesn't play much. But because we don't have that player in the penalty area, who's usually in the penalty area, to get on the end of passes and crosses and find himself in a goal scoring position with high quality finishing skills. So, because that's clearly not the particular strength that the support strikers we have. So it becomes quite difficult to score, and I think we're seeing that evidence of that emerging more and more during the season, and I think the efficiency of the team is compromised, and then there's the whole sustainability of playing in this way, and the other problem that we don't really have another player like that. So generally, if Totti doesn't play, we play with Destro, which means a complete a radical change of tactics, because the support strikers then become principally suppliers to Destro rather than finishers that by getting on the end of Totti's passes and crosses. So there's quite a bit of confusion, I think, in attack and general inefficiency. I think it's going to be really interesting what happens for the remainder of the season, because there's no doubt we are creaking in attack. We are struggling to create and particularly finish chances and to look consistently dangerous. And unless Garcia can resolve that, I can see maybe an exit before the quarterfinals in the Europa League, not making that much progress in Serie A in terms of inroads into Juventus, staving off the clubs who might push in the second half of the season, like Napoli, for the second place behind Juventus, and moderate success maybe in the Coppa Italia. But so I think unless Garcia can revise things in the attacking department towards the end of the season, and maybe or in the second half of the season next month, I can see problems ahead, but I don't expect him to do that anytime soon.
I see. Well, the Totti thing is a very interesting issue, and it'll be interesting to see how it phases out over time in the next couple of weeks or even seasons. Sorry, not weeks. But yes, let's move on now to Mercato. Speculation will crank up in England about Strootman moving to the Manchester United Louis van Gaal scene. So in terms of Mercato, Rabiot, I think Giovanni will kill me for pronouncing that incorrectly, but the French PSG defensive midfielder was almost close to a Roma move, but seemed to sign a new contract. But we'll move on to Mercato now. Dani knows a bit about it. We had some interesting reports from Giovanni about the player that was Perotti, where he says that we're only a couple of hours away from signing him. He's quite injury prone and not continuous over his career, but he's quick. He's got amazing technical ability and uses both feet with ease. He's a winger, of course, and there are people reporting that he'll be an African. He's being brought in to cover for Gervinho, and Gervinho goes to the African Cup of Nations, which of course starts early January, ends early February. But that's not true. He has a 4-match ban, and that's why that's why he's not covered for Gervinho. Juventus tried to buy him as well, so this will be another winger that Roma may have poached from under Juventus's nose, which will be great. So, what do you think about Mercato, Dani? What do you think about it all?
I'm not sure we necessarily needed another winger to cover for Gervinho. If we can afford it, then great, I suppose. But I suppose Perotti's done well at Genoa. I haven't seen too much of him, but he's had some rave reviews. He only joined them recently, if I'm correct, this year, in fact. But yeah, I think there's other needs that we really need to address before getting extra wingers. Really, primarily, I think we should probably go for a goalkeeper. I was trying to juggle up in my head there. Do we need a fullback or a goalkeeper more? And probably need a goalkeeper more because the Sanctus has had some howlers every game almost. Even yesterday against Milan, he gave the ball away on quite a few occasions. And obviously, I would love someone like Mattia Perin, but hasn't really been linked to us. And his agent recently denied that Perin will move within Italy and will rather move outside of Italy, but obviously that could be a ploy to drive up Perin's price for Roma. Other names that would link to it, Petr Cech, and he's got massive wages, so I can't really imagine him at Roma. He doesn't really fit our wage structure, and he's quite old as well. I think he's almost 33. The other name was, of course, Neto, who seems close to signing with Fiorentina, and even if he wasn't close to Fiorentina, I would rather dislike to have him at the club. He seems very poor with his feet, and that's obviously the biggest problem with De Sanctis. So almost just replacing De Sanctis for a younger version, in my opinion. So yeah, I think we need a goalkeeper ASAP. Or besides that, a fullback, someone like Darmian, because I think we really struggle when we don't have Maicon, and I think Holebas has showed a good turn of form at left back, but I think we really struggle when Maicon doesn't play, and Maicon apparently struggling with some fitness problems. So I would go with a goalkeeper or a fullback in January. I think our biggest needs right now.
Well, I think that we won't do that much business in January. We certainly won't sell Strootman. I don't think we'll sell Strootman at all. Maybe in the summer, but not January. We won't take any A-listers in January either. I think that transfers like the goalkeeper that we really need to make a sound investment on, and a long-term investment on, won't happen until probably July time. So I would think we would not sign anyone major within Italy or from within Europe. And the only place where we might make a pretty big signing is from South America. So, and there are links to Balanta that would please me a lot if we could sign him. Central defender from Colombian national team, central defender from River Plate, that I've heard good reports about. Plus, it would also give us another option in central defence, because I think there are doubts about Castan's ability to return, and what he's going to be like if he does return. So, and we have two players currently on loan with options to buy in Astori and Yanga Mabiwa. So I could see that, a move like that transpiring, but I don't really see much else, to be honest.
Okay, we have that's almost all we have time for here on this week's Roma Press podcast, but we have a couple of questions. A number of them tweeted in from ASR_Nick, who asked us the opinions on Destro and why he needs to play over Totti. I think we've covered that relatively well. We've also had a question about Destro being underutilised. Does he suit the style of play? Will he be sold, and who would replace him? There are two questions here, though, however, regarding Kevin Strootman. By ASR_Nick, he says, do you believe Strootman is ready to start after the Christmas break? And then we also have one from Joe, who says, is it time to cash in on him and reinvest in a top striker? So, what do you two think of that?
I'll go first, and then I'll leave this to James. But firstly, with Strootman, I don't think he's ready. I think I'd give him still another 2 more months before considering starting him. He doesn't really look comfortable on the ball when he's played so far, but which is understandable, of course. The problem is, the more uncomfortable he looks and the less of the play he was that he looks, means his price goes down. So that's probably the advantage of selling him in January, is that his price can't fall any lower, whereas if he plays more from January till the summer and he doesn't really show the same results, then his price would obviously go down. Roma not really in a selling position, but personally I would cash in on him probably in the summer, but I wouldn't do it to buy another striker, because obviously I do have faith in Destro that he's good enough. Just think he needs a system, like I've said. I would instead rather put that money towards securing a long-term solution for a goalkeeper, and maybe someone like Darmian as a fullback, and then maybe someone like Rabiot from PSG as a long-term replacement for Keita and De Rossi. So yes, I would cash in on him, but not for another striker, because it's the same problem again. If you buy someone like Jackson Martinez, there's no point, because Totti will still be the starter, and Jackson Martinez will hardly get a game in, which is one name I've seen linked. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Well, I think that Strootman, yes, it would be a good. I would be more prepared to lose Strootman than I would Pjanic, for example, if it came to a choice between the two. Probably our most marketable players and sought after players, and then I think Strootman would have a good transfer market. So, and I think there are a number of players in Italy already who could replace him in the central midfield role. Plus, of course, we took Nangolan, which would mean that type of combative midfielder we're less in need of, because we already have Nangolan, who's a player definitely of starting quality. So I think it would be potentially a move we could do. It would depend on the economics of it, what sort of fee we could get, and the point is well made that the longer he takes to recover, it could affect his price. But I think we would make some profit on the deal, and it's a question of how much, really. But it's certainly something I would be less opposed to than I was, say, 12 months ago.
I see. Well, it's been a very interesting discussion here on Rome Press this week. We've discussed the Europa League and whether it's worth vying for, Totti and his decline, as well as Mercato and the Inter Milan and Genoa games. But that's all we have time for on Rome Press today. I've been joined by Dani and James. Thank you very much both for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, James.
C'è Maicon che chiama palla, dategli la palla a Maicon, quello c'è in gran destra, attenzione, la palla per Dani. Go! Go! Go!